In this video, I want to talk about the basic understandings as well as the basic execution of a War Thunder modified Battle Drill 2 Alpha that you can use with your buddies in voice chat as well as random teammates in War Thunder games. I'm also going to talk about the caveats that come along with conducting this attack. The goal is to get many of you going from this to this. For those of you that don't know what Battle Drill 2 Alpha is, it is the military's textbook way to conduct a squad assault. Now, before you leak conspiracy theorists start going insane trying to start some controversy saying I'm speaking some classified stuff, look it up. It's public domain. You can find this crap anywhere. You can buy the Techniques publication on Amazon. And even though this battle drill is most famously known with dismounted movement, but believe it or not, it actually translates to the War Thunder battlefield with relative ease. Conducting this sort of attack and movement really only needs two fundamental parts: a suppressing element and a flanking element. The suppressing element is usually the element that makes initial contact with the enemy player. Their job is to suppress them, keep their heads down, garner their attention, while the other element, the flanking element, conducts a movement around the side or to the rear and then eliminates them. On your screen now is a basic illustration of what a squad attack looks like. You have your lead element that moves up and engages the enemy directly, and then you have your second element that flanks out to either side and then also engages the enemy. Let's drop some tanks in here to make it War Thunder relatable. I'm going to refer to this one as Tank 1, the other one, Tank 2. Tank 1 gets into a fight with an enemy vehicle. They're exchanging shots at each other. Tank 2 notices Tank 1 get into a fight. Tank 2 decides to conduct a flanking maneuver around the side to eliminate the enemy vehicle. This is possible because the enemy vehicle's attention is solely focused on Tank 1. The key to the success here is Tank 2 is not right on top of Tank 1. If Tank 2 is right on top of Tank 1, then chances are Tank 2 will get spotted while he's conducting his movement. However, if there is adequate space between Tank 1 and Tank 2, the possibility of Tank 2 getting spotted during his flanking maneuver is drastically decreased because Tank 2 wants to stay out of the peripheral vision of that enemy vehicle that's already focused on his teammate. It's also important to remember that not every attack is going to look exactly like this, so you have to mold this based on the situation that you're in. But as long as you can keep the two core elements present in whatever way you choose to approach a situation, a suppressing element and a flanking element, you can fundamentally conduct this in many different ways. So now that you have a basic understanding of what the attack actually looks like and entails, let's get more detailed with each element of it. Starting with the suppressing part. What does it actually mean to suppress an enemy player? Well, if we look at Google's basic definition, it's forcibly put an end to. So you might ask yourself, what are you forcibly putting an end to in the game? Well, you want to forcibly put an end to their ability to fight effectively. And you can do that in one of two ways. The first way, obviously, module damage, gun, track, engine, all that kind of stuff. Second way, which is my personal favorite, is to force them into tunnel vision. If we look at the definition of tunnel vision, the tendency to focus exclusively on a single or limited goal or point of view. In this case, you want that limited goal or point of view as the suppressing player to be you. You want to garner the enemy's attention all on yourself, because the more attention that's on you, there's less attention on potential teammates conducting the flank. And for those of you that need a visual representation, here you go. Some things you can do to garner someone's attention is W key, S key. You know, forward, back, forward, back. Constantly make it look like you're about to poke and shoot. That way it forces the enemy to keep his gun aimed on you. That one is especially perfect when you yourself are an inferior vehicle, because the enemy is going to know that he's in a far superior vehicle than you, and he's going to let that confidence of, oh, hey, look, I'm about to get a free kill. I'm going to sit here and watch this guy. Completely, totally loses all sense around him. Let's move into our first clip that provides a good example of what it looks like to hold an enemy's attention long enough while your teammate moves into a position for the kill. The first thing I want to mention in this clip is look at the M41. He's spotted the enemy IS-3, but he hasn't poked to engage him and give away his position yet, because that M41 knows that he does not stand a chance against that thing frontally. So he spots the IS-3 with the intent that I will see it and that we can engage him together. I know we just talked about tanks not being on top of each other, but in this instance, that fact gets negated by the Bulldog not revealing his position to the IS-3, as well as waiting for the IS-3 to reload until he moves. I'm shooting at this IS-3 frontally, even though I know I cannot penetrate it. But this is the situation which I am trying to garner that IS-3's attention. Now that the IS-3 knows where I am, I'm using my W key S key tactics, I'm shooting my coaxes, I'm trying to bait his shots into my turret, all while that M41 decided to push forward and head to those buildings to our front left. The Bulldog was smart enough to recognize the IS-3 reload and made his movement during that time. Notice how the IS-3 is dancing. He's trying to angle his armor. He is solely focused on preventing me from getting a kill shot on him. Now during this time, the Bulldog was able to get close, and although the Bulldog didn't flank as far around as I thought he was going to, he got himself into a position in which the IS-3 wouldn't be able to aim down, and he was able to put a Sabo round up through his lower plate and take him out. But it's a textbook example of what can happen if you can distract your enemy long enough for your ally to get into a really good position. This brings us to our first major caveat. You must continue to suppress the enemy vehicle while your teammate is conducting the flanking maneuver. Let's move into our next clip that highlights why this is so critically important. Myself and this Carnarvon just engaged an enemy tank in our vicinity, thus effectively giving away our position to other enemy players nearby. We could hear the enemy vehicles, but we just couldn't tell where exactly they were. Now, making noise can be a form of suppression. If you're loud enough, you can force the other vehicle to stop and try and listen for your location. And while they're stopping and listening, they're not focusing on what's going on directly around them. So we could hear two enemy vehicles. The first enemy vehicle, which happens to be an Object 120, gets shot and gets killed. So right at the start of the engagement, the element that's responsible for suppressing got taken out. Even though the suppressing element got taken out, the flanking element is still continuing his maneuver. We can hear him clear as day. It's a BMP. Now, because I know the threat of that 120 is already dealt with, I am free to sit here and use my listening and try and determine what location the BMP is coming from. And because I play with other player engines extremely loud in the audio settings, I can tell that he's coming from behind me, so we go ahead and turn around and we sit and wait for him. He pops out with this gotcha moment thinking he has us, but there we are waiting for him and we take him out. This clip really highlights the importance of why you have to keep the elements suppressed while you're conducting the flank. Otherwise, there's a good chance they're gonna hear you coming and be ready for you. Now, let's talk about the flanking aspect. If we look at the definition of flank, we want to look at that verb down at the bottom. Be on each side or one side of. Pretty self-explanatory, right? When the suppressing element is engaging that enemy player, the flanking player wants to not be too far away from where he loses, control of the situation or his understanding of what the situation actually is, but also far enough to where if the enemy pops in and out of his gunner sights, try and get a better idea of what's happening around him, that he doesn't see you in his peripheral vision. Now, obviously, this is going to be subject to map dependence, whether you're in a city or open field. Those distances are going to vary based on the environment that you're trying to engage each other in. So you're going to have to make that call. Let's move into our last clip where it's myself and a buddy and we're playing on Golden Quarry. You'll see in the beginning that I'm far enough away from my buddy's position to where the enemy vehicle can't get line of sight on me, but I'm close enough to my buddy's position that if the enemy decides to push him, I can support him and help. First thing he does is lay down a squad ping to let me know where the guy's at. He then let me know what it was. He said roughly something that looks like an M48 and that it was looking at him. That last detail, looking at him, very important, which means he potentially doesn't even know we're even here. We come up into this little raised platform area, and despite some really terrible driving by my driver, he's still none the wiser and we get the kill. Textbook, my buddy has his attention, and then I perform the flank and get the kill. But I want to go back and revisit this clip in regards to the enemy player. What he does is a prime example of caveat number 2. Tunnel vision will kill you. We come up into this little lifted area, we look down and we see the guy, and he's staring right at my buddy's position. And that dude doesn't move an inch, which means for the past 20-ish seconds that it took my tank to get here, this player didn't take his eyes off my buddy's position at all. And I think this serves as solid evidence that whenever you're trying to maximize one of your senses, the other senses severely diminish. In this case, this player was so tunnel visioned with his eyesight on my buddy's position that he honestly couldn't hear me coming. And I was the only vehicle moving at this time. Watch this clip at regular speed, take into account my poor driving, and look how long this guy continues to look in the same direction. I was able to move, flank, and get a shot off in just over 12 seconds. So now you should be able to see why forcing your enemy into tunnel vision is so important when you're attacking, and why you should do everything in your power not to fall into tunnel vision when you're defending. I'm going to say this because it's important to remember that when I show these clips, I'm not picking on the opposing players or my teammates. The goal here is to learn, take things you don't normally think about in your own game, implement these new tactics, become aware of potentially your own weaknesses. That way you can become a better player. One more thing I want to mention before we end this video is the elephant in the room of, Ronick, what do I do when I just don't have competent teammates that I can work together with? That's a common issue that I see a lot on the War Thunder Reddit in specific, of how poor people think their teammates are. And a lot of the time, that's true. Some people just, aren't that good at the game. But I encourage all of you in your quest to get better, increase your win rate, increase your kill death, increase your average relative finishing on your team. Don't look at situations like that and think we can win this if this person would just hurry up and do this or that. Look at what they're not doing. Think to yourself, what else can I do to help influence the game? For example, if you and a teammate are fighting an enemy vehicle and you're pinging the map trying to get him to flank, but he's just not picking it up, maybe that's your cue to leave him to fight the enemy and then you flank. If you yourself do everything in your power to win the game and you still don't win, you can leave the battlefield knowing you did everything you could. And the reality is, you're still going to lose a lot of games, but you can leave the fight knowing you did everything you could. And the more you start thinking about what else can I do to help the team, you start teaching yourself to look for battlefield indicators more often in your battles. And that makes you a better player. And that makes you the player that people lean on to carry them to victory. And especially if you're trying to get better at War Thunder, that's a hell of a thing to hang your hat on. I hope y'all learned something today in the video. If you did or have any questions, please leave it down in the comments below. I love interacting with you. Stay tuned. I do plan on making more tutorial videos in the future. Check out some of my other videos. Show them some love. I appreciate all your support as always. Thanks again, everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.